Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here, and today I'm going to be talking about my experience at my first Mapleseed rifleman course that I took yesterday. For those of you who might be more familiar with the Appleseed rifleman course in the States, the Mapleseed event is basically just the Canadianized version of it. Of course, we don't have the American specific content, but the fundamentals that they teach you for rifle shooting is basically the same, and the only difference that I noticed looking at Appleseed event content online is the shape of the targets we shoot for the qualification test is instead of a human shaped silhouette, it's a geometric shape just to be a little bit more friendly to Canadians. But as you can see here, the MQT or Appleseed will be AQT. The qualification test to shoot and qualify for rifleman is basically the exact same. It's the same scoring. You have to get a minimum of 210 points of the available 250. And for those of you who are wondering, I was able to shoot rifleman, so I did get my patch, which was basically just like the cherry on top of an already amazing day. So I'm really happy I was able to do that, especially at my first Mapleseed event. I would say if it's your first event, especially, don't go with your goal, your specific goal to be acquiring rifleman, because if you don't get it, you're going to be really disappointed. And I think it kind of puts a damper on the really great information you can get walking away from a Mapleseed event. So, I mean, if that's your goal, that's not a bad thing, especially if you've taken it multiple times. I know a lot of people will have this as their goal, but again, as a first timer, I wouldn't really recommend going into it with that specific goal in mind. Although if you get it, like myself, it's just an awesome experience, of course. So I'll show my targets from the MQT afterwards, but I thought I'd just talk about my experience a little bit. I don't really have any notes or any preparation of this video, but it was an amazing time. The instructors were awesome. They've done it so many times. They know how to teach really well, and when you're actually on the line shooting, practicing the fundamentals that they teach you, they're really good in correcting any issues that they see. The day basically started out with some like clinic classroom style learning. They would show you some techniques, and then you would alternate between learning a technique and then actually trying it on the firing line. So you actually had a lot of time to practice these fundamentals that they were teaching you with live fire, and going back and forth between a teaching session and a shooting session. So it was a lot of fun. I was actually out at the range for almost 10 hours yesterday, but the time flew by because I was having such a great time and learning a lot of information as well. I will say that these events are not just for newer shooters. I mean, it's great for anyone, and it was really cool seeing the variety of different skill levels at the event yesterday. Now, there's only 10 of us shooting and taking the course because of the restrictions, the health restrictions in place because of the COVID situation. There's only 10 of us, but there was like 6 or 7 instructors, which was awesome because it was almost like a one-on-one session, getting really good information of how to properly shoot and become a rifleman, hopefully. So out of the 10 of us, 3 of us were able to achieve the rifleman score during our MQT. And it was just really good information, again, for both novice shooters and more experienced as well. A little bit of a background of why I wanted to take the Mapleseed course was when I started shooting my ORPS matches in the winter, which is basically NRL 22, but here in Canada, we're always guaranteed at least one stage that is offhand, unsupported. You're allowed using a sling, but obviously no bipods or bags. And that was a definite weak point of myself, as a lot of other shooters can agree on. And someone mentioned to me, hey, there's this course you can take. It's called Mapleseed, and it's basically teaching you the fundamentals and basics of marksmanship, shooting offhand, sling only, no support. And obviously that was kind of a no-brainer if I wanted to improve my offhand shooting. It just seemed like a great course to take, and I'm really glad I did, because it taught me a lot of things that I may have kind of known how to do, or I knew the general concepts, but in terms of actually getting proper training and showing how these techniques are supposed to be applied was a huge benefit. So there were some things that I learned that were also not as obvious, like how to position, your elbow properly in the prone position. That was just night and day in terms of how my group sizes tightened up. So there was a lot of great information that I walked away from. And even if I didn't, get the qualification for this rifleman patch, I would have still had an amazing time. So talking about the equipment that I used at the course yesterday, you can see here in front of me is my wife's 457. This is the rifle that I used for the Mapleseed event. I thought about using my 457, but it is a little bit heavy and it's totally fine for a 2-minute stage in my ORPS matches. But since I was doing a full day event and shooting, all offhand, I decided to use her rifle because it is substantially lighter than mine. That said though, obviously it's set up for her, so the length of pull was kind of short, and of course I forgot to bring my length of pull spacers to the range. So I had to have a very ghetto contraption of some foam and just a bunch of electrical tape to help, lengthen the buttstock so I could get a proper eye relief, especially in the prone positions. But it worked out, and even with that super ghetto length of pull spacer on the buttstock, I was still able to shoot rifleman, so it wasn't really inhibiting my shooting performance at all. And of course I have the adjustable cheek piece here, so I can adjust that really easily. Yeah, I didn't really change her setup at all. Obviously I didn't want to change the scope and push it forward at the range because I didn't have a good method of leveling it back up, so I just left it there and opted for putting the spacers on the back of the buttstock. I shot the entire day at 7 times magnification. The scope goes down to 6, but I'm kind of a magnification hog, so I shot it at 7 times, just to get a little bit more. It still gave me good enough field of view, so I wasn't shooting other people's targets, which apparently is an issue at these events. And a very important point is obviously dialing your parallax, because it makes a huge difference on such small targets like this. So I made sure the first thing I did in the morning was dial in my parallax to the distance. You're only shooting at one distance at these events. It's 25 meters, which is 82 feet. I don't know what that is in yards, but it must be like 27 yards or something. So yeah, just dial in your parallax, set your magnification and just leave it for the rest of the day. And it worked out really nicely. Besides that, I shot the entire day with SK Standard Plus. This is just an empty box. I was actually not sure what to do with this lot of SK Standard Plus because it was cronying at a lower velocity than what I like to shoot my ORPS matches with. So I figured yesterday at the Mapleseed event was a great time to get rid of some of it, because you're only shooting 25 meters anyway, so velocities is not a huge issue. And these are they shoot like lasers out of this rifle. They're very accurate, so that's obviously a huge benefit. Obviously the 457 here is a bolt action. I do definitely see the advantages of a semi for these Mapleseed events, especially for the more time constrained stages. In the MQT, there's 4 stages. Stages 2 and 3 are by far, in my opinion, the most difficult because of the time constraint. It makes it pretty difficult to get off all your shots if you're using a bolt action. Obviously it's doable because I did it, but if you're not as comfortable running a bolt action, definitely consider finding a reliable semi-automatic to use. And the key word there is reliable, because if you don't have a reliable rifle and you have to clear malfunctions or you're getting stovepipes and whatnot, it can definitely hinder your score very significantly. So I would definitely take a bolt action over a unreliable semi to this event. But again, it was very doable to do with the bolt action here. I actually brought a 1022 in my car just in case, because I wasn't sure, because everyone online on the forums and stuff recommended to bring a semi if you could. But tons of people have done it with bolt actions, and obviously I did it as well. My specific Mapleseed event yesterday, because of the range we were shooting on, was a rimfire only event, but I can actually see it being a very fun event to do with a center fire if you have the option to do so. Obviously ammunition will be way more expensive because you shoot quite a bit of ammo. I didn't count how many rounds we spent exactly yesterday, but I brought a brick, so a full 500 rounds of SK, and I think we used maybe 6 or 7 boxes out of the 10. Which is quite a bit. That's like 300, 350 rounds. So a lot of shooting, which is great because it's not all just clinic style. You're not just sitting there absorbing information. You can actually go and practice each method and technique that they teach you. They basically start from the ground up. So they teach you how to shoot prone, then you shoot sitting, kneeling, and then standing. So lots of good practice. Yesterday was blazingly hot, of course. It seems like every time I have an event or match at the range, it has to be super hot. So yesterday there was actually a heat warning in effect. It was around 35 degrees Celsius, which I think it's like 90 something, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And we were out there for 10 hours, 7:30 to, I think we were there till 5:30. So it was a hot day, and at the end at one point I thought the heat was going to get to me and I probably wouldn't be able to shoot rifleman just because I was so exhausted. I was drinking water, you know, throughout the whole day, but I still felt like I was dehydrated because it was just so hot. Luckily, during the clinic sessions we had a tent that we sat under in the shade, so it wasn't too hot, but our shooting mats and our rifles stayed obviously on the firing line, which was in the sun, so they were just getting cooked. You know, every time I put my cheek on this stock, it was just, you know, almost burning my face, and my arms on the shooting mat were pretty uncomfortable. Obviously it's not gonna hurt me, but it just was a very hot day is what I'm getting at. I ended up, every time I left the shooting line, I would fold my shooting mat in half so that the surface I actually lay on would be in the shade. It kind of helped a little bit. But yeah, even then, you know, it was a great day. And even though it was super hot and I generally wouldn't spend 10 hours in the sun if it was that hot, it was worth it because of all the information that I was able to learn. So definitely bring a shooting mat, obviously. And a sling is the other very important thing besides your rifle for your setup. So the sling I used all day yesterday was this one here. And this is actually a sling I made myself. I bought the hardware and the webbing. I made a few of these slings for some other shooters that I shoot the matches with. And I used it the entire day yesterday. So it kind of proved itself to me, which was a great way to test it, especially a full day course like this. What it is, it's basically a homemade version of the short action precision sling. It has a lot of the same features. But at the front of the sling here, we have a rapid adjustment for the length. So you can use this little pull tab that I stitched into it. You can pull it up to lengthen the sling or pull it towards yourself to cinch everything up and shorten the sling very rapidly. And as you can see there, it's a very quick adjustment. And you can actually do this under tension too. I purposely sized this tri-lock to be able to slide on this webbing easily under tension, but it's still nice and secure when you have it in the position you want. If there's tension in this sling, it does not move. So that's what you want. Obviously, going to the middle of the sling here, I do have an arm cuff. So this goes around your bicep. My version here is self-constricting. So as I load the sling, you can see the cuff will tighten around your arm. So as I load into the rifle, this cuff is tightening around my bicep. I almost said bipod. I found this to be a very personal preference. For me, obviously, it's not an issue. I did the entire course yesterday with this self-constricting arm loop. And sometimes I do feel the lack of blood in my arm, but it never gets numb or anything like that. So it works out for me completely fine. Some of the other guys that I made this sling for definitely don't like the self-constricting arm loop. So I'm gonna sew a stopper in here so that it doesn't constrict all the way around their arm, because they were getting numb arms a lot quicker. And obviously it's a personal thing, you know, biological. Also, it depends on how heavily you load your rifle into the sling. But anyway, in the arm cuff here, I also have a quick release buckle, which is actually quite nice. When I'm done shooting, instead of having to fish my arm out of the sling awkwardly, I can just reach over with my right hand side and undo the buckle, and I'm, you know, out of the sling very quickly. And then on the rear here, the rear portion here, just another rifle mounting point, and I just have some H buckles to adjust the overall length of the sling as needed. But this sling worked out really nicely, as I already mentioned. And what's nice about having a 2-point sling like this is they teach you to both use this arm loop method as well as doing a hasty sling. So some of the slings I made for the other shooters at my club was just this portion here without the rear portion here, because if you're only using it for positional shooting, you don't need to have the second point of attachment on the rear of your rifle, but then you can't use the hasty sling method. So this one worked out really nicely because I can use hasty sling or the loop sling depending on the scenario. You don't need such a full feature sling like this to shoot a Mapleseed event. You can use like a standard GI sling. They teach you how to use a more standard GI sling in order to acquire an arm loop so that you can shoot it like a loop style sling anyway. And another good option would be the Magpul RLS sling, which I think stands for Rifleman's Loop Sling, which I actually have, but I can't find it at the moment. I probably misplaced it. But I decided again to make my own here, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, that's very important for a Mapleseed event, is a good sling, a good reliable rifle, and a shooting mat. I think those are like the 3 most important things. and you'll get a lot out of your day. I'll show some targets here. This is a few of the practice targets we shot during the day. I'll put some up close shots here, but these were all from prone. And you can see as the day went along, my groups are opening up quite bad. And again, the heat was starting to get to me too. So I was really unsure if I was going to be able to make the rifleman qualification at the end of the day when we shot the MQT. But luckily I was. I'll show my MQT targets now. So we shot it 3 times. Generally speaking, at Mapleseed events, you will have the opportunity to shoot the MQT course of fire multiple times, usually 2 or 3 times, depending on time constraint. We were able to shoot it 3 times. So the first time here, I did not qualify for rifleman. I got 194 points out of the 250 available. So it kind of sucked because some of the groupings, especially for my standing position here, were quite nice, but I should have just brought it up slightly to get a lot more points. And then on my prone position in stage 4, I dropped the ball on a lot of these targets. I'll be totally honest, I was kind of nervous because at the end of the day, you know, you've gone through so much in terms of absorbing knowledge and practicing and trying your best at making all these tight groups that you really do want the rifleman qualification, because it's just kind of, again, that cherry on top of an already great event. So I really wanted it, and I think it kind of made me more nervous than I had to be. So when I shot the MQT afterwards, I was definitely a little bit more relaxed, and that obviously helps a lot for positional shooting. As I mentioned before, stage 2 and 3 are definitely the most difficult in my opinion because of the time constraint. You have 55 seconds and 65 seconds respectively for stage 2 and 3, and they purposely make you do a magazine change for both these stages, and to get 10 rounds off with a bolt action can be fairly stressful. But you know, using all the fundamentals that they teach you for shooting offhand like this, if you remember what they teach you and you don't try and just muscle your rifle over to the next target, you can actually land hits very quickly. Even with running a bolt gun, you just have to keep in mind what they taught you, which obviously is the whole point of this qualification, to see if you can implement what you learned during the day. So going on to my second qualification test here, I was able to score rifleman, and actually on my second and third try I had the exact same score of 223 points out of, again, the 250. So that was pretty funny that I got 2 MQTs, exact same score that qualified for rifleman. So I was very fortunate. It's a very nerve-wracking experience because you don't score yourself. Basically, once you're done shooting this, you just hand it off to the instructor, and you don't find out what your score is until the very end of the day. So basically, after you shoot an MQT, the only thing you can think about is if you made rifleman or not. But it was a lot of fun. I wasn't sure. I was trying to do quick math in my head. You know, every time we pull these off the target boards, I look at them and be like, I wonder if this qualifies for rifleman. But you know, you only walk a few steps before you give it away. So I wasn't able to really confirm that, and I was yeah, that's all I could think about after I shot my MQTs. When they announced the rifleman, I was actually the first one to get my badge, just, you know, in the order they announced them, and they said Matthew, but there was actually 2 Matthews, is me and another dude. So I wasn't sure which one it was, you know, so I kind of looked at him and they're like, no, you, and I was like, oh, sick. So I was really excited to get this. I won't lie, it was an awesome experience to be able to acquire the rifleman qualification on my first Mapleseed. So anyway, that was my day. I think I'll end off this video by showing a clip of me shooting 3 targets from standing, sitting, and prone. This was before I took the Mapleseed course yesterday, so some of the techniques you'll see in this video is not textbook like what I would be doing now with all the knowledge that I have from Mapleseed. But just out of curiosity, I wanted to see after I made these slings how much they helped in shooting offhand. So in this target here, I did kind of like a baseline test at the top first. I did take my time, so this wasn't under any time constraint, but the top target here was no sling, standing, sitting, prone, and then the bottom 3 targets here is the exact same distance, but using the sling I made from standing, sitting, prone. And as you can see on the picture online, pardon me, that's on the video right now, it helped tighten the groups incredibly. And if you implement the fundamentals they teach you at a Mapleseed or Appleseed event, they'll probably tighten up even more. Anyway, that's just to end off the video. Again, I had an amazing time at the Mapleseed event yesterday. Thank you to all the instructors that put in their hard work. They're all volunteers, you know, no one gets paid for this. So I think that's amazing just to share the passion of marksmanship. Definitely try and get out to an event, even if you're a more experienced shooter. I think you can get something out of it, and trying to acquire the rifleman qualification is obviously a great challenge for anyone. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, as usual, I'll do my best to answer them, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
See dust from your shots way. You're skipping up.
Oh, I see. I guess that's why they don't want us to do this with center fire. Was that 4 or 5 shots, sorry?
4.
Okay. That's pretty good, huh?
Very close to the end.
Alright, I'm gonna go sitting now. that's it.
How was that?
You have really nice grouping.
I'm not gonna lie, this sling is like night and day. It's crazy, and that speaks for itself. That's insane.